The question of private universities, Right Honourable Speaker, that are threatened with closure because of being unchartered. First of all, about education. We have a huge challenge with tertiary education. And as a key stakeholder, the National Council for Education, the National Council for Education Act needs review to include, among others, to capture the proliferation of private universities, because the regulations to start are a bit lax. So you are free to start, and they are free to close you tomorrow. But in doing so, you endanger the future of so many young people, so many people that would have enrolled with you. But true, unrelatedly, in amending the law, the role of government in education needs to be seen more. The imagination is that because they are private universities, they are offering private education. There's no private education, there are no private citizens. So the role of government needs to be seen more in this sector, like it is everywhere. I think that the Prime Minister did not offer justice to this question. I would have heard, if I were the Prime Minister, I would have offered more plausible, reliable answers, because these are not private citizens, they are Ugandans in private universities. A policy on support, I recollect, over the last 10 years, government has been consistently supporting, by way of subvention and students, a university, I don't have to mention, with several students and paying their fees. So what happens to the others? Because it's this institution on which they thrive, to be able to hire professors, because one of the roadblocks to chartering, human resource and infrastructure. Right, Honourable Prime Minister, you have a huge void in this sector. You need to look at the policy without necessarily blaming and condemning these institutions to closure, because the consequences on human resource, on employment, are so huge. Two, the question raised by the Honourable Lillian Abel about PLE results, I'm afraid the Prime Minister handled casually. First of all, by now, I would have expected a detailed statement from the Minister of Education on PLE results. By simply advising parents, by giving them seven options, go to this, go to vocational, go this, it's not enough. Right, Honourable Speaker, teachers have been disoriented. We know, for example, that government promised schools closer to parents and children. The schools remain a pipe dream. Do we know, for example, why there are more failures in government schools than private schools? The Prime Minister said that the reason for failure is because of COVID. Did COVID single out children in private schools, in government schools, and left private schools alone? So it's not COVID. The problem is different. Go for it. Otherwise, the sector still begs answers. Children go hungry at school. They're hungry. The Vice President issued a statement last week. Go to school with nothing. You have no demand, just take the kids to school. Those blank statements disorient education. We must go back to the basics. Without being populist, we need to rethink this sector and help our children. How do we have children go hungry at school, and we encourage parents not part with 10,000 for food, and instead part with 30,000 to go and report to the RDC? So where's the balance? It's a big problem, Prime Minister. Please don't run away from it. Right, Honourable Speaker, we expect on resumption the Minister for Education to come to the House and explain the raising failures and the dropouts. 1.8 enrolled in primary 1, only 800 completed P7. Where are these children? Right Honourable Speaker. Thirdly, the question raised by the Honourable Kabusu about the problem over the health center in Kalangala could have been supplied with a more cogent answer from my sister, the minister. He needed probably a timeline. We are processing the BFP and consequently the budget. Is it one of them? Because it's a facility in a hard-to-reach area. Members need assurance, especially when they are coming from highly vulnerable communities like Kalangala. Assurances in terms of timelines calm people's nerves. I know the Honourable Minister for Health is a very sensitive person and cares. Please do more on this question. Probably the Honourable Member should come to you and get more assurance that in the BFP and the final documents of the ministry, this facility is included. The question raised by the Land Attorney General on my side about the statements of the statement issued by the Honourable Minister for Lands, State for Lands. The Prime Minister believes that since the approval is done by the ministry, so there's no problem. Approval is not control. Parliament approves the Auditor General, the IGIG, we don't control them. This minister has been seen frolicking all over the place, making statements uncoordinated. I think the Prime Minister needs to rein into this minister. He's attacking individuals, the institutions, the Kabaka. And when you don't rein into him, we believe it's the policy of government, the position of government. So the Honourable Sam Mayanja needs to be reined into. Otherwise, he's going to raise unnecessary sentiments among his people when actually he's frolicking on his own, out of his appetite and happiness for being a minister, as if he's the first minister. Lastly, Right Honourable Speaker. Oh, second last. The question of frustrating local governments raised by the Honourable Member from Gomba remains pertinent. And sometimes I feel pity to comrades here because they come from suffering local governments. Actually, you are now dealing with the fossils, not local governments, the remains of local governments. The government has since decentralized. Control is back at the center. This House of Parliament has to rethink whether the planning, the budgeting is still localized. The local governments are dead. How do you send 1 million to a district to do roads? I was in Budiope, Right Honourable Speaker, over the weekend for a burial. And the leaders there are all NRM. They were calling out to me to rescue them. They were desperate. Of course, I promised a rescue in the immediacy. They are saying we are doing nothing. We received 100. One local sub-county chairperson said we received 500,000 to do roads, and we were muting us whether we should sit and share it out and go home, and everyone goes on their own. It's terrible. So, Prime Minister, there are no local governments. You have fossils. There remains. You can find them there wherever you go. They don't have resources. You took them back. Return the money to the local governments and they function. Study materials for Senior 3. This matter has been canvassed several here, Honourable Speaker. And one of the challenges is that even up to now, the teachers were not trained. Several teachers have never been oriented in this curriculum. That Honourable Prime Minister, you may want to do this House a favor and table to this House of Parliament the number of teachers that have received training from both private and public schools. You'll be shocked. Secondly, even the curriculum still has challenges. The review should have been very regular. You remember our advice on sequencing and cascading? We are in a hurry to impress. So education must be delicately handled. There is a problem, Right Honourable Prime Minister. You need to rise to the occasion. Lastly, the issue raised by the Honorable Jonathan Odul on drug abuse, I think it was not understood by the Prime Minister. His point was that there's almost proliferation of growing of marijuana. And those growing claim that they are selling to some people that have licenses. May we ask the Prime Minister to table the list of companies that have licenses so that we can know the buyers? Probably a track over the abusers could be easier. That there's a cartel of growers that have a license and it's a preserve of them alone and alone. And subsequently, communities are suffering because now selling to the growers that have a license to sell abroad is on black market. So they are growing and consuming at the same time. So you've not supplied an answer to the Honourable Member, Right Honourable Prime Minister. We know the Act is available. It talked about implementation. You probably will think of a better answer. Right Honourable Speaker, finally, the law does not stop me from asking a small question to the Prime Minister. Lastly, the Board of Bank of Uganda expires on 18th February, and only 2 will be eligible for reappointment. There is no governor at Bank of Uganda. Will the Prime Minister tell us whether they are aware of this problem and they're going to fix it, or they are bargaining and making deals with the people? Right, Honourable Speaker.
Thank you.